You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans. Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I have to start with the NBA. No, not LeBron James and Anthony Davis signing extensions with the Lakers. Those are fantastic moves, and the Lakers will be title contenders for as long as those guys are around. Instead, I have to talk about the blockbuster NBA trade that happened yesterday. Russell Westbrook going to the Wizards in exchange for John Wall and their lottery-protected first-rounder in 2023. Now, the protection on that pick decreases each year. 2024, it's top 12 protected. 2025, it's top 10 protected. 2026, it's top 8 protected. If it hasn't conveyed by then it becomes 2 second-rounders. There are a bunch of ways that you have to look at this trade. You've got to look at it from the team's perspectives and from the players' perspectives. I'll start with the Rockets. They're blowing things up. It's just that simple. They can say they're not, they are. All offseason, we've heard that the Rockets want to give it another go with Harden and Westbrook. They just want to retool the supporting cast. We know that's not true. I don't begrudge Raphael Stone for lying. It's his job to lie. But to the people saying that this means James Harden isn't going to go anywhere, that this makes the Rockets a title threat, their odds to win the NBA title, according to William Hill, went up after this trade. They were 20-1. Now they're 16-1. Even though you can't win with Russell Westbrook, this doesn't put the Rockets anywhere closer to winning an NBA title this year. The one thing that you can't say about Russell Westbrook is that he's injury prone. He's had some years where he's been banged up, but usually you can count on him to play a lot of games. Excluding last year, this guy's played in over 70 games every year since the 15-16 season. John Wall, on the other hand, hasn't played an NBA game since December 26th, 2018. It's been 2 years since he's played in an NBA game. You have no idea how he's going to come back. Do I think he'll be fine? I don't think he'll have lost that much of a step. I think you'll be able to count on him for about 18 points a game. He'll play really good defense. He'll distribute the ball really well. If the Rockets are going to blow things up by trading Harden, at least they have a guy in John Wall who will keep them relevant. They'll have someone there that NBA fans will want to see. I like John Wall. John Wall should have been a net. Before the injury, this guy was a great player. He had made 5 straight All-Star games. But the notion that this makes the Rockets more of a threat to win the title, are you nuts? Let's assume for a minute that James Harden stays a Rocket. I like the idea of Harden and Wall playing together. Wall's more of a penetrator than Harden. Wall's more of a distributor than Westbrook. Westbrook is a better scorer overall than Wall, but it's not a huge drop-off. And the biggest thing is, Wall cares about winning. Westbrook just cares about his own stats. I mean, I like the idea of Harden and Wall more than I do Harden and Westbrook. But I'd like the idea of Harden and anyone if I'm comparing that duo to Harden and Westbrook. You just can't win with Westbrook. That's fact. Russell Westbrook is too me-centric to ever win in the NBA. All you need to do is just watch him play. It's pretty obvious. So from that end of things, you can understand it, but that's a very elementary way of looking at it. With the exception of DeMarcus Cousins and Ben McLemore, they have no bench. If Eric Gordon's going to come off the bench, then yeah, they have a solid bench. But I think Gordon's going to start. I think he's going to play the 3. Also, did they really get that much better at point guard? Is John Wall that much better than Russell Westbrook? You have no idea how Wall's going to come back after missing 2 years. This guy isn't Kevin Durant. He's not Dominique Wilkins. He's not Kobe Bryant. All due respect to Wall, again, I like Wall a lot, but he's not as talented as those guys. It's a fair bet to say that he'll have lost a step. Russell Westbrook is better than John Wall. Yes, you can't win with Russell Westbrook, but Westbrook is the more dominant player. The Rockets didn't do this trade to try to make an NBA title run. They did this trade because they wanted a first rounder. They got it. Good for them. And I'll tell you, I like the idea of John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins joining forces again. They were both on the 09-10 Kentucky Wildcats. They were a fantastic duo. I like the idea of them playing together again. I like that more than I like Wall and Harden, to tell you the truth. I just think it's going to be more fun to see Wall and Cousins back together again. It's a good move for the Rockets, but it makes them no more likely to win an NBA title. There's no way they were gonna win an NBA title this year. But it makes them no more likely to do it. It doesn't move the needle. The biggest thing concerning the Rockets when it comes to this trade is, what does this mean for James Harden? That was the first thing I thought of. There's no easy answer to that question. I mean, the Rockets said that they wanted to try to run this thing back with Harden and Westbrook. retool the roster a little bit, get rid of Robert Covington, and go from there. But there were reports saying that the Rockets wanted to try to rebuild around James Harden, and only James Harden. Again, this doesn't make the Rockets any likelier to win an NBA title, but it does fit the mold of retooling the Rockets around James Harden. You replaced Russell Westbrook, Robert Covington, and Jeff Green with John Wall, Christian Wood, and DeMarcus Cousins. Congratulations, you revamped the team, but you're not going to go anywhere with this team. You're just not. Is it possible you sneak into the playoffs? I guess. But you're not going to do anything once you get there. Kelly Iko of The Athletic said that the Rockets are still in win-now mode. They don't want to do anything to signal a full-scale rebuild. That's how the Rockets view themselves. They view themselves as a team that can make the playoffs, and then once they get there, miracles can happen. I think that's a ridiculous premise. I don't see this team doing anything spectacular. They're going to have to fight hard for a playoff spot. You're going to be bounced in the first round if you make it, and James Harden's still going to be upset. You did nothing to placate him. All you did was just retool the roster. Congratulations. You didn't get any better. You're no likelier to win an NBA title now than you were 24 hours ago. Is a James Harden trade unlikely? The answer is yes. Is it still possible? The answer is yes. But again, it's got to happen sooner rather than later. The NBA season is going to tip off in 19 days. Preseason games are going to be here before you know it. If it's going to happen, and again, there's no guarantee it does. In fact, if I was a betting man, I'd probably say it's not going to happen. But if it does, it's got to happen now. As for the Wizards, this makes them a lot likelier to make the playoffs. When did Russell Westbrook have the most success? When he played with Scott Brooks. Where is Scott Brooks coaching now? Oh yeah, Washington, D.C. Brooks was able to get Westbrook to take a step back, not be so reliant on statistics, and actually do what's best for the team. I don't think Westbrook is going to go for that again, but if anyone can get that out of him, it's Scott Brooks. Again, Russell Westbrook is better than John Wall. And I like the idea of Westbrook and Beal playing together. I really think that can work. Westbrook is a guy who needs the ball in his hands a lot. And Bradley Beal is the kind of guy who can take a step back, let Westbrook dominate the game, but still be there to drop 25 points a game. Here's a guy who can stretch the floor, shoots the ball efficiently. He's not the greatest three-point shooter in the world, I understand that. But the guy still had 30.5 points per game last year. I really like the idea of Westbrook and Beal together. Beal's a guy who doesn't need the spotlight. Westbrook does. People forget the Wizards were invited to Disney. They played in the bubble. They were dreadful in the bubble. They were so bad that they fell behind the Hornets. But they were duking it out for that final playoff spot. This makes them a lot likelier to get there. You can trust Westbrook more than Wall. Again, you're not going to win anything. You're going to be bounced in the first round. Maybe, depending on who you go up against, you can steal around. Because the Wizards do have a solid roster around Westbrook and Beal. Rui Hachimura. They brought in Davis Bertans. They still have Thomas Bryant. They signed Robin Lopez. They drafted Deni Avdija. They have a good roster. This trade makes a lot of sense for the Wizards. They're making a playoff push. They were embarrassed in Disney. The year before that, they only had 32 wins. They're fighting for that last playoff spot. Give them credit. All in all, this trade makes sense for both teams. The Rockets get a first rounder, and they get a guy who you can actually win with in John Wall. And it makes sense for the Wizards because they got a better player to play alongside Bradley Beal. Beal's not going anywhere now. And I think this makes the Wizards a solid bet to make the playoffs next year. I'd like the Rockets to go all in on the rebuild by trading James Harden also. I'm not saying that because I want him on the Nets. I do want him on the Nets, but I think it makes more sense for the Rockets to just tear the whole thing down completely. But regardless, this trade makes sense for both teams. Alright, now I'll give you some Ravens-Steelers Valk talk. Let's make sure we never have another Wednesday football game. Because that game yesterday was terrible. Both teams played like garbage. I understand that the Steelers were rusty. They hadn't played since November 22nd. They geared themselves up to play on Thursday. It didn't work. Sunday, no. Monday, no. Tuesday, no. Wednesday, yes. That would affect anyone. But you've got to do better than what the Steelers did yesterday. If you're an undefeated team, you've got to play better than that. The Steelers had golden opportunities to put their foot on the throat of the Ravens. The fumble on the read option in the first quarter, the Steelers get the ball on the Ravens 22. They had first and goal at the 7. Couldn't punch it in. Roethlisberger threw an interception on 4th down. The drive that started in the first quarter and ended in the second quarter. The Steelers went down the length of the football field. First and goal on the 5. Couldn't punch it in. The drive after that, the Ravens went 3 and out. Steelers start on their own 26. They drive down to the Ravens' 8-yard line. They can't get anything going. The combination of the drops by the Steelers pass catchers and the great Ravens goal line defense kept the Ravens in this game. Crazily enough, the Ravens had an opportunity to take the lead at the half. First and goal at the Steelers' 4-yard line. Justice Hill takes it to the 1-yard line. The Ravens take a timeout for some asinine reason. Gus Edwards tries to stuff it in. Give the Steelers credit for what they did. They took their sweet time getting up. The Ravens were left scrambling to run one more play. They got it off. But Minkah Fitzpatrick did a great job of jarring the ball away from Luke Wilson. Wilson had a touchdown in his hands. Fitzpatrick jarred it loose. The Steelers should have been called for a delay of game, there's no question. But Luke Wilson had the ball in his hands. You've got to hold on to it. That's what you should get upset about if you're a Ravens fan. I mean, this was just a sloppy game overall. You had 4 turnovers. The Roethlisberger interception. Ray McCloud muffed a punt when someone was barreling towards him at full speed. Hey kid, wave for the fair catch. When you see someone running towards you at full speed, wave for a fair catch. Don't try to be a hero, you stupid fool. The Ravens weren't any better though. RG3 looked lost. He knew he was going to start for a while. And that's the performance he puts out? The guy only threw 12 passes. He completed 7 of them. He only threw for 33 yards. And he threw a pick 6. Now he had 7 rushes for 68 yards, including a big 39-yarder. You had the flashbacks to his Redskins days. And yes, I think it's okay to say Redskins in that context. Because they weren't the Washington football team then. RG3 was a Redskin. Mark Rippon was a Redskin. Doug Williams was a Redskin. They've changed the name now, and I respect that. If I'm talking about guys like Chase Young, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, Washington football team. But guys like John Riggins and Art Monk, Washington Redskins. We had flashbacks to that with that 39-yard run. That was it. Only 3 Ravens caught passes yesterday. Marquise Brown, Devin Duvernay, and Justice Hill. You know how many Steelers had a reception yesterday? 8. A disastrous performance by RG3. The pick 6 wasn't his fault as much as it was Joe Hayden just making a great play on the football. But again, you're the quarterback. You take the hit for that. RG3 turned the ball over twice. That's inexcusable. A lot of people wanted to see Trace McSorley, and they got to see him in the 4th quarter. I kind of like how John Harbaugh did that. The Ravens are down 12 with 7 minutes and 21 seconds left in the game. The Ravens have the ball on their own 14. They have nothing to lose at this point. It's pretty much a formality that they're going to lose this game. You know what? Let's see what this kid can do. McSorley didn't look bad. Had a big run on 4th down. Threw a 70-yard touchdown to Marquise Brown. I said yesterday that the Ravens did a good job of bringing in a backup quarterback with a similar skill set to Lamar Jackson. They did a good job in bringing in a 3rd-string quarterback with a similar skill set to Lamar Jackson. That was McSorley's first game, and I'll take it. 2 for 6 for 77 yards and a touchdown, 3 rushes for 16 yards. We all knew that McSorley was going to be inaccurate. But for his first NFL game, when he didn't expect to play at all, I'll take it. All in all, this was an ugly win for the Steelers. They got the win, give them credit. Their defense was fantastic. A lot of people after that win were saying that the Steelers are the worst undefeated team through 11 games in NFL history. Look, I understand that they haven't had the toughest schedule in the world, and some of their games against lesser teams, you'd have liked them to win a little more convincingly, but they're getting the win. That's all that matters. They're 11-0. They're the best team in football. It's not the Chiefs. It's the Steelers. We're gonna get a Steelers-Chiefs AFC title game, and it's gonna be a fantastic game. But you can't take away anything from what the Steelers have done. Your team isn't 11-0. My team is 0-11. Nothing ticks me off more than to see someone minimizing a win. I'd kill for a win right now. Yes, I know the first overall pick getting Trevor Lawrence, that's more important. But I still don't want that distinction of going 0-16. I want to go 1-15 and get the first overall pick. The Jaguars play the Vikings on Sunday. I understand that the Vikings have turned it around recently. They're 4-1 in their last 5. But the Jaguars haven't played bad their last few games. They had a close loss to the Texans, a close loss to the Packers, got blown out by the Steelers. Okay, fine. Close loss to the Browns. That's a winnable game for the Jaguars. Alright, now I'll give you some college basketball Valk talk. And I'll start with Texas UNC. A game that started out pretty bad. Texas had a 12-point lead at the half. UNC came storming back. And then Matt Coleman III hit the biggest shot of his life. Great step-back jumper to win the game for Texas. Firstly, let me just say that I hate Bill Walton. I respect his playing career. The guy was a dominant big man, and he'd be remembered a lot more fondly if he didn't have all those injuries. But I hate him as a color commentator. There's a time for being wacky, and that's when the game is a blowout, or there's nothing going on during the game. This guy's wacky during the game, barely talks about the game. He's a sideshow. He tries to make the broadcast all about himself. I feel sorry for the play-by-play guys that are forced to work with him. Guys like Dave Pash and Jason Benetti deserve a lot better than him. Bill Walton is nothing but a joke. And ESPN should be ashamed of themselves for putting him on TV. Alright, now that that's out of the way, I can talk about the game. These are two really good teams. UNC last year was terrible. They were going to miss out on March Madness. They were probably going to miss out on the NITs. They've gotten off to a great start. They can hold their heads high after this loss. Nothing to be ashamed of here. They lost to a really, really good Texas team. Obviously, Texas was led by Matt Coleman, but they got some other solid contributions. Courtney Ramey's gotten off to a really good start. He had 13 points yesterday. Shot the ball a little too much. I wanted him to move the ball around a little bit more, but that's something that can be worked on. I have all the faith in the world in Shaka Smart, with or without hair. Kai Jones off the bench had 12 points. He's a really dangerous player for Texas. He's a guy who can take over a game even when he's coming off the bench. He has that ability. He's a Lou Williams, Dennis Schroeder type. I see a little bit of those guys in him. And Greg Brown had a solid game. This is a guy who's known more as a rebounder. He had 10 points and 2 steals. Give him credit. The Longhorns' defense was on point. UNC only attempted 9 threes. They only hit one of them. This is a team with R.J. Davis, a guy who can shoot. He only attempted 2 threes. And he missed both of them. They did a great job of making UNC earn their points at the line. UNC attempted 32 free throws. They only hit 18. If they hit 3 more free throws, that's it. Or just 1 more 3, they win the Maui Invitational. But again, they lost to a really good team. This is a UNC team with a ton of talent. I really like Garrison Brooks. The leadership he brings as a senior to this young core of Davis, Armando Bacot, and Caleb Love is invaluable. Bacot had a solid game. He had a double-double, 10 points, 12 rebounds. Davis and Love were off. Davis only had 11 points, shot 3 for 11 from the field. Like I said, 0 for 2 from beyond the arc. That's not going to work for me. Caleb Love, though, was dreadful. Only had 5 points, 2 for 13 from the field, 0 for 4 from beyond the arc. He turned the ball over 4 times. This is a good UNC team. If March Madness had been a thing last year, they wouldn't have been in it. This year, they're going to make it. I have no doubt of that. Moving on now to WVU Gonzaga. Remember when I said Gonzaga was the real deal? Believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. The reason that I didn't preview this game, or any college basketball game for that matter, is because we don't have a lot of information to go off of. When the season is young, it's really unfair to preview a game. You're making a lot of generalizations. It's a lot better to recap it. That's just fact. WVU did a great job of making Gonzaga play their type of game. A physical game. Gonzaga still got theirs on the fast break. That's what they do. But WVU limited it to a certain extent. Good job by Bob Huggins, and a great job by Derek Culver. By far and away, the best Mountaineer on the court yesterday, had 18 points and 15 rebounds. He's a beast. One of the most underrated players in the nation. Oscar Tshiebwe nearly had a double-double. 14 points, 9 rebounds. I liked what Gabe Asabuhian, I'm pretty sure I butchered that name, brought to the table. Him and Toshibwe did foul out late into that game. That hurt WVU a lot. You can make the argument that that was the seminal reason why they lost this game. But all in all, this was a well-rounded game for WVU. It would have been a nice statement win, but to put up 82 points, that's pretty good. They made Gonzaga work for this win. Taz Sherman and Miles McBride also deserve to be mentioned. Sherman turned the ball over 4 times, which I didn't like, but he had 12 points. McBride had 10. They had solid games. Okay, on to Gonzaga. Even with Jalen Suggs getting hurt and not being 100% when he was back on the court, Gonzaga still found a way to win this game, and that just speaks to their dominance. Joel Ayayi, Drew Timme, Corey Kispert. These guys are beasts. They are going to dominate all throughout this season. There's no question about that in my mind. Andrew Nemard, a guy who transferred over from Florida, the only guy to willingly go from Florida to Spokane, Washington, had the game of his life. He filled the Suggs role beautifully. 19 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Great job by him. Great job by Mark Few. I know it's way too early to make March Madness picks, but I'll say this. A lot of people are going to steer clear of Gonzaga because they're usually highly ranked and then they disappoint. I don't think they're going to do that this year. This offense is just too stacked. I think they're going to go on a massive run. Moving on now to Illinois Baylor. A game that was good for the first half and I guess a half. It was good for the first 30 minutes, is what I'm trying to say. Illinois hung tough for a little bit. Ayo Dosunmu got his, because of course he did. He's one of the best players in the nation. Georgi Bezhanashvili got his. That was his best game of the season. Andre Curbelo had 11 points. That was nice to see. But all in all, this was a disappointing outing for the Illini. Kofi Coburn and Adam Miller are 2 guys that Brad Underwood is going to count on a lot this year. And I like Brad Underwood a lot. He's done a really good job with that program. But Coburn and Miller no-showed. Coburn got into foul trouble early. He only played 18 minutes. Miller shot just 2 for 11 from the field. 0 for 6 from beyond the arc. After that 30th minute, Baylor just came alive. They dominated. Something in them clicked. I don't know if it was a killer instinct or something like that, but they just dominated from that point on. This game was hyped up as the battle of Dosunmu versus Butler. Jared Butler is a really good player, really good defensively. He got his. He had 12 points and 3 steals. But this game was more Adam Flagler, Davion Mitchell, and Jonathan Chamwa Chachua. Of course I can pronounce that. Masio Teague and Matthew Mayer also got theirs. Mark Vidal did too. 6.7 rebounds. I'll take that. This was a great, well-rounded effort by the Bears. They started this season a little bit behind the 8 ball. Scott Drew tested positive for the coronavirus. They gave up 82 points to Louisiana Lafayette. I understand they put up 112, but still, they gave up 82 points. That's not that impressive. They rebounded with a dominant win over Washington. I understand it's Washington, but still, they got the win. And they thrashed Illinois. Saturday at 1. They play Gonzaga. They did a great job of weathering the early storm. It's going to be fascinating to see how they play against the Zags. I'm going to be locked into that game like crazy. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. I'll start with a pretty notable trade. Not as earth-shattering as the Westbrook Wall trade, but still, it's notable. The Orioles traded Jose Iglesias to the Angels for Garrett Stallings and Gene Pinto. Pinto, I don't know too much about. I know he's a righty starter. Started 3 games in the Dominican Summer League for the Angels in 2019. Pitched well, but I don't know too much about him besides that. I do know a lot about Jose Iglesias, though. Came up with the Red Sox with the reputation of being a defensive wunderkind at short. He can hit. Last year, he hit .373. The year before that, he hit .288 with 11 homers and 59 RBIs. He has a career .278 average. In addition to that, he can field the shortstop position pretty well. I feel like Iglesias has always had that reputation of being a glove-first shortstop, but then when you actually take a step back, it's like, he can hit also. Can't hit for power, but that's okay. You don't need that from your shortstop. The Angels were going to lose Andrelton Simmons anyway. They needed another shortstop. They did a good job in replacing him with someone who's just as good. And you can make the argument a little better in Iglesias. As for Garrett Stallings, he's a very polished pitcher. Very confident, knows what he wants to do whenever he steps foot on the mound. Works very quickly. Throws 4 pitches. Fastball, slider, changeup, curveball. And they're all average. That means he's not going to lose them as he progresses through the minor league system. He's never played a game in the minors. He's on the older side. He's 23. But I'll tell you, he can start in Double-A and hold his own. Stallings will never be great. Best case scenario, he's a 4th or 5th starter. It's a solid return for the Orioles, but I'd have expected Iglesias to fetch more than a guy like Stallings. I'd want someone with a little more upside than him. The Angels easily won this trade. So yesterday was the deadline for MLB teams to tender contracts to their arbitration-eligible players. If they didn't, then they're free agents. We had some pretty notable guys being non-tendered. The first one broke yesterday, but I wanted to save it for today because I wanted to keep all these types of stories together. And that is Eddie Rosario being non-tendered by the Twins. Matt Whistler was non-tendered also. Twins made some surprising decisions. I mean, Rosario you can understand because they have Alex Kirilloff and Trevor Larnach knocking on the door, ready to take Rosario's spot. I thought a team would want to trade for Rosario. Now they can just sign him. He's a solid player. Hit .257 with 13 homers and 42 RBIs last year. The year before he had .276 with 32 homers and 109 RBIs. If you're looking for a left fielder, you could do a lot worse than Eddie Rosario. He's in the top half of starting left fielders in this league. But the Twins have Kirilloff and Larnach knocking on the door. I don't mind that decision. Whistler's really surprising. This guy dominated last year. He had a 107 ERA. Look, he's not going to duplicate that. We all know that. But you don't give up on a guy like that. You've got to keep him around. The Twins already saw Trevor May leave in free agency. Now they're going to see Whistler walk, and Sergio Romo's a free agent also. That's a bad job by the Twins. Whistler's going to land on his feet. He's going to get a chance to show what he can do for another team. Again, he won't pitch to a 1 ERA next year, but he could be a solid piece out of someone's bullpen. The Yankees just non-tender Jonathan Holder. I could see Whistler sliding into that spot. I was sorry to see Holder go. I liked him. I know why the Yankees did it, but I still like Holder. I think he has good stuff. He'll get a minor league deal with a spring training invite. Moving on now to the Braves non-tendering Adam Duvall. A guy who hit 16 home runs in 57 games. That equates to a .532 slugging percentage, is now gone. I understand that Duvall doesn't get on base. He doesn't hit for a high average. He had .237 and had a .301 on base percentage last year. And in 2019 he was hurt. He only played in 41 games. I get all that. But the Braves have Marcell Ozuna and Nick Markakis as free agents. I understand they still have Ronald Acuna Jr. And Austin Riley can play the outfield a little bit. And they have Christian Pache. I get that. But don't you want a little insurance in keeping Duvall around? This guy has a really good power bat. Maybe you don't want him starting. But if the National League isn't going to have the DH next year, which the jury is still out on, we don't know what's going to happen with that, it makes a ton of sense to have Duvall as your primary pinch hitter. Another NL team could scoop him up in a heartbeat. I wouldn't have gotten rid of Duvall. Moving on now to the Rockies, getting rid of David Dahl. A guy who really struggled last year. He only hit .183, only had a .222 on base percentage. At first glance, you may think it's a no-brainer to get rid of Dahl. Well, It's actually not. In fact, it's a terrible decision. Dahl got hurt last year. He's had injury concerns his whole career. I get that. But when healthy, he's a really, really, really good player. He hit .302 with 15 homers and 61 RBIs in 2019. He made the All-Star team. Look, you'd like Dahl to be more durable, there's no question. But you can't get rid of him. The injuries combined with 60 games? Yes, of course he's going to have a bad season. Will Dahl ever be great? The answer is no. He's too brittle. But he's a really good player who usually hits for a .300 average and solid power. He'll land on his feet. There's no question about that in my mind. This is a bad job by the Rockies. Besides Charlie Blackmon, they have no one in that outfield. Can you trust Ian Desmond to come back and be 100% after missing last season? I don't think so. The last one to talk about is the big one. It's the one that some Yankees fans are really interested in. They want this guy desperately, and that's Kyle Schwarber. Now, I understand why some Yankees fans are calling for Schwarber. He's a guy who Brian Cashman has liked for a long time. In fact, when Aroldis Chapman was traded to the Cubs, Cashman initially asked for Schwarber. He was shot down. I don't know if it was Torres and Schwarber that Cashman wanted, or Schwarber and someone else. But I know he really wanted Schwarber in a Chapman trade. I mean, this is a guy with a tailor-made stroke for Yankee Stadium. He's a lefty, that short porch. This guy averages 36 home runs. It's not a stretch to say he could hit 40 to 50 at Yankee Stadium if he plays every game. If you were to write down on a piece of paper what you'd look for in a swing to take advantage of that short porch in right field, it'd look a lot like Schwarber's swing. Having said that, though, you've got some issues. As it stands right now, the Yankees have a logjam in the outfield. Frazier, Tauchman, Hicks, Judge, maybe Andujar. That's 4, maybe 5. You've got Stanton clogging up the DH spot. You can only play 3 of those guys. Now, the Yankees do need a backup outfielder. The thing is, though, Schwarber can only play left. And he's not really that good in left. He has a career .981 fielding percentage there. He's made 13 errors. He's a man without a position. In a perfect world, he's a DH. But Stanton's not going to play left. Stanton's the DH. Now, I did propose a Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar trade for Marco Gonzalez of the Mariners. Now, I did that because I thought Mike Tauchman could slide into left field seamlessly. He'd be a really good leadoff hitter, fantastic in the field, has shown that he can produce for the Yankees. I'd have had no problem giving Tauchman that spot. But if the Yankees do that trade, there's an opening in left field. Tauchman doesn't need to fill it. Tauchman can play all 3 outfield positions. Kyle Schwarber would make sense there. You don't need Tauchman starting. So if the Yankees trade Frazier, to get a starter, they can slot Schwarber in at left field, no problem. That would make a ton of sense. I'm not sold on Frazier. Had a great season last year. Proved me wrong. But I just can't trust him to do it again. I can't read too much into this 60-game season. Is it possible Frazier can do it again? Yes. But I'd rather trade him at his highest point. If you can get Marco Gonzalez for Frazier, you do that. There is another option, though. And it's an option that no one's talking about. And I don't know how Schwarber would feel about this. This guy has catching experience. He came up as a catcher. Now, he doesn't have a ton of catching experience in the majors, and he's not a good defensive catcher. In fact, he may be worse than Gary Sanchez. The Yankees just tendered Sanchez a contract, but that doesn't mean they need to keep him. They can trade Sanchez, they can have him as the backup. If you're done with Gary Sanchez, you can call for Schwarber. That makes some sense. You'd get sick of him very quickly, for the same reason that you're sick of Sanchez. Terrible defense. But if you just don't want to look at Sanchez anymore, you can sign Schwarber. He's more durable. He'll hit for a better average. Last year he hit 188, I get that, but that's actually better than Sanchez. And the year before, he hit 250. Again, better than Sanchez. If the Yankees are going to bring Schwarber in, it's probably going to be as the starting left fielder. I don't think he'd want to come off the bench. It's possible, but I wouldn't bet on it. And if the Yankees are going to move on from Sanchez, it's going to be for someone who's much, much, much better defensively. Kyle Schwarber is not much, much, much better defensively than Sanchez. As the starting left fielder, though, if they trade Frazier for a guy like Marco Gonzalez or a starter of that ilk, it makes a ton of sense. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that I'm not dating anyone right now, but I'm in great demand.